I stood in the center of the police station, my hands still shaking, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of what I'd just done. Detective Harris stared at me like I'd grown a second head, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that Vincent Romano, the most feared crime boss in Chicago, just walked into this station and surrendered evidence against the Moretti family? Because of you?" I looked down at my son, Marco, sleeping peacefully in my arms, his tiny fingers clutching my shirt. 3 hours ago, I'd been tied to a chair in an abandoned warehouse, certain I'd never see my baby again. Now I was watching the news footage of federal agents raiding the Moretti compound, all because one dangerous man had decided that protecting me was worth burning down his entire criminal empire. "Not because of me," I whispered, stroking Marco's dark hair. "Because of him." 6 months ago, I was just another struggling single mother in Chicago, invisible to everyone except the bill collectors. I never imagined that cleaning the house of a mafia boss would save my life. But more than that, I never imagined it would teach me that sometimes the most dangerous men can become the safest place to fall. This is the story of how I learned that strength isn't about never needing help, it's about knowing when to accept it. And how a little boy's cry for help would change 3 lives forever. My name is Elena Vasquez, and at 26 years old, I had already perfected the art of being invisible. Every morning started the same way. I'd wake up at 4:30 a.m. in our cramped one-bedroom apartment, the kind where the radiator clanged all night and the neighbors' arguments bled through paper-thin walls. I'd kiss my sleeping 2-year-old son, Marco, and whisper promises I wasn't sure I could keep. "Mama's going to make everything okay, mi amor. I promise." But the truth was, I was drowning. Working 3 jobs just to keep us barely afloat, cleaning houses during the day, waitressing at night, and doing data entry on my laptop whenever Marco finally fell asleep. My hands were always raw from cleaning chemicals, my feet always aching from standing, my eyes always burning from exhaustion. Marco's father, David, had disappeared the moment I told him I was pregnant. "I'm not ready to be a dad," he'd said, like fatherhood was a jacket he could simply refuse to wear. He'd left me with nothing but debt from the apartment we'd shared and a pregnancy that cost me my scholarship to Northwestern. I'd been studying social work, dreaming of helping women escape domestic violence. The irony wasn't lost on me, I'd wanted to save others, but I couldn't even save myself from poverty. My mother had tried to help at first, but she was barely surviving herself, working double shifts as a nurse in a neighborhood where gunshots were as common as sirens. "Mija," she'd say, her voice heavy with exhaustion, "I wish I could do more. But I can barely keep my own head above water." I understood. We were both drowning women, trying not to pull each other under. The worst part wasn't the physical exhaustion. It was the invisibility. The way my cleaning clients would talk about me like I wasn't in the room. The way restaurant customers would snap their fingers at me instead of using my name. The way the world had decided that because I was poor, because I was a single mother, because I cleaned toilets for a living, I wasn't worth seeing as a whole person. I'd stand in the bathroom sometimes, staring at my reflection, auburn hair pulled into a messy ponytail, dark circles under my brown eyes, clothes that smelled like bleach no matter how many times I washed them, and wonder when I'd stopped recognizing myself. "You used to have dreams," I'd whisper to that tired woman in the mirror. "What happened to you?" But I knew what happened. Life happened. Poverty happened. Single motherhood happened. And dreams, I'd learned, were luxuries reserved for people who could afford them. The turning point came on a Tuesday in October. I was rushing between jobs, already 20 minutes late to pick up Marco from my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez, who watched him for almost nothing because she had a soft heart and remembered being young and desperate herself. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Elena Vasquez?" A woman's voice, professional and brisk. "Yes?" "This is Margaret Chen from Elite Home Services. We have an urgent position available. One of our clients lost their housekeeper unexpectedly, and your name came up in our database. The pay is 3 times your current rate, but it's in Lincoln Park, and the client is particular. 3 times my current rate. The words echoed in my head. That kind of money could mean I could quit one of my other jobs. Could mean I could actually spend evenings with Marco instead of leaving him with babysitters. Could mean I could breathe for the first time in 2 years. I'll take it, I said before she could finish explaining. Don't you want to know who the client is? Does it matter? There was a pause. His name is Vincent Romano. The name meant nothing to me then. I wasn't from Chicago originally, and I didn't follow the news about organized crime families. I just heard 3 times my current rate and thought it was my salvation. When do I start? Tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. sharp. Don't be late. Mr. Romano doesn't tolerate tardiness. That night, I held Marco close as he slept, breathing in his baby's shampoo scent and feeling something I hadn't felt in months, hope. Small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, things were about to get better. I had no idea I was about to step into a world where people like me didn't just become invisible, they disappeared entirely. ACT 2, entering the Lions Den 8:30 to 1800 hours, the Romano mansion wasn't just a house. It was a fortress disguised as elegance. I arrived at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, my hands clutching the straps of my worn backpack. The iron gates were intimidating, the security cameras even more so. When I pressed the intercom button, a male voice answered immediately. Name and business. Elena Vasquez. I'm the new housekeeper. The gates swung open silently, and I walked up the long driveway, my second-hand sneakers crunching on perfect gravel. The mansion loomed ahead, all stone and glass and wealth I couldn't begin to comprehend. A stern-looking woman in her 50s met me at the door. I'm Mrs. Castellano, the head of household staff. You're early. Good. Mr. Romano appreciates punctuality. She looked me up and down, her expression unreadable. You'll be responsible for the main living areas, the library, and Mr. Romano's office. You do not enter the East Wing under any circumstances. You do not speak to Mr. Romano unless spoken to. You do not ask questions about his business or his visitors. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Mr. Romano he's a complicated man. He's lost a lot in his life, and he doesn't trust easily. Do your job well, stay out of his way, and you'll have no problems. She handed me a uniform, simple black dress, white apron, and showed me to a small changing room. As I put on the clothes, I felt like I was putting on armor, preparing for battle in a war I didn't understand. The first week passed in a blur of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. I cleaned rooms larger than my entire apartment, dusted artwork that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime, and tried to remain as invisible as I'd always been. I saw Vincent Romano only in passing during those first days, a tall figure in expensive suits, always on his phone, always surrounded by men who looked like they could break bones with their bare hands. He never looked at me. Never acknowledged my existence. I was furniture to him, part of the house that required occasional maintenance. But I noticed him. How could I not? There was something about the way he carried himself, controlled power wrapped in careful stillness. Like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. And yet, sometimes I'd catch him standing at the window of his office, staring out at nothing, and the loneliness in his posture was so familiar it made my chest ache. Everything changed on a Friday afternoon in my second week. I was cleaning the library, my favorite room in the house, filled with books I wanted to read but knew I never would. I'd pulled one from the shelf, a collection of Pablo Neruda's poetry, and was running my finger over the Spanish verses when I heard his voice behind me. You read poetry? I spun around, nearly dropping the book. Vincent Romano stood in the doorway, jacket off, tie loosened, looking more human than I'd ever seen him. I'm sorry, Mr. Romano. I shouldn't have. Do you speak Spanish? He interrupted. Yes, sir. It's my first language. He moved into the room, and I instinctively took a step back. He noticed, and something flickered across his face. Not anger. Something softer. Sadness, maybe. My wife loved that poet, he said quietly, gesturing to the book in my hands. She'd read his work aloud when she couldn't sleep. Said his words understood longing better than any other language. She had good taste, I said carefully. Neruda knew how to turn pain into beauty. You've read his work? In college. Before. I stopped myself. Before what? I shouldn't have answered. Should have made an excuse and gotten back to work. But something about the way he was looking at me, really looking at me, seeing me for the first time, made me honest. Before I got pregnant. Before the father left. Before I had to drop out to work 3 jobs just to survive. The words hung between us, raw and unplanned. I waited for him to dismiss me, to tell Mrs. Castellano to find someone else, someone who knew how to stay invisible. Instead, he said, "How old is your child?" 2. His name is Marco. Marco, he repeated softly. That was my father's name. We stood in silence for a moment, 2 strangers connected by the weight of what we'd lost. My wife died 3 years ago, Vincent said suddenly. Car accident. She was 8 months pregnant with our first child. I lost them both in one night. My hand went to my mouth. Mr. Romano, I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry, he said, his voice hardening. Sorry doesn't bring them back. Sorry doesn't fill the silence in this house. No, I agreed quietly. It doesn't. Nothing does. He looked at me sharply. You understand. I understand loss. Different loss, but I understand the hole it leaves. The way you wake up every morning and have to remember all over again that they're gone. The way you have to keep moving because stopping means drowning. Something shifted in his eyes. Recognition. What's your name? Elena. Elena, he tested the name like he was tasting something fragile. You've been working here for 2 weeks, and I didn't even know your name. Most people don't. That's not a compliment to them. It's not meant to be. The ghost of a smile touched his lips. You're different from the others. I'm not afraid of you, I said, then immediately regretted my boldness. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate. Why aren't you afraid? Because I've been surviving on my own with a toddler for 2 years. I've faced eviction notices and empty refrigerators and nights wondering if I'd ever be anything more than invisible. Whatever you are, Mr. Romano, whatever people say about you, you're not the scariest thing I've faced. He stared at me for a long moment, and I couldn't read his expression. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. Not a full laugh, but a genuine sound of surprise. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, I admitted. Elena, he said, moving toward the door. Same time tomorrow. I want you to clean this room while I work. And bring your son. I blinked. Excuse me? Your son. Marco. Bring him tomorrow. Mrs. Castellano can watch him while you work. I have a feeling he'd be safer here than wherever you're leaving him now. Mr. Romano, I can't, you can. And you will. He paused at the doorway. I like people who aren't afraid to be honest with me. It's rare. Don't waste it by arguing about things that benefit you. He left, and I stood alone in the library, my heart pounding, wondering what had just happened. That night, as I held Marco close, I felt the same fragile hope I'd felt when I got this job. But this time it was mixed with something else. Something that felt dangerous. For the first time in 2 years, someone had seen me. Really seen me. Not as a housekeeper or a struggling single mother or an invisible woman, but as Elena, whole, complicated, worth noticing. I just had no idea how dangerous that kind of visibility could be. ACT3, The Forbidden Connection 18:00-28:00, bringing Marco to the Romano mansion felt like crossing an invisible line. Mrs. Castellano wasn't thrilled. Mr. Romano has never allowed staff to bring children here, she said, her mouth pressed into a thin line. I don't know what you did to earn this privilege, but don't abuse it. I didn't ask for it, I said honestly. That almost makes it worse. But she set up a playpen in the kitchen and provided toys that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Marco, bless his adaptable little heart, seemed delighted by the change of scenery. Big house, Mama, he said, his eyes wide with wonder. Yes, baby. Very big house. You stay with Mrs. Castellano and be good, okay? Okay, Mama. In the library, Vincent was already working at his desk, papers spread before him, phone pressed to his ear. He gestured for me to start cleaning without interrupting his call. I worked quietly, trying not to listen to his conversation. But it was impossible not to hear the tension in his voice. I don't care what Moretti thinks he's owed, Vincent said coldly. That shipment was payment for the Thompson Street protection. If he wants more, he can take it up with me directly. A pause. Tell him I said that. Word for word. He hung up and sat back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. Long day? I asked before I could stop myself. Every day is long in this business. He looked up at me. How's Marco? Happy as a clam in the kitchen. Mrs. Castellano is pretending to be annoyed, but I caught her smiling at him. She has grandchildren. She misses them. Her daughter moved to California last year. He said it casually, but I heard the subtext. He paid attention to his staff, knew their lives, cared about their losses. That must be hard for her. Loss is hard for everyone. We just get better at hiding it. I moved to dust the bookshelf near his desk, aware of his eyes following my movements. Elena, he said suddenly. Why did you drop out of college? The question caught me off guard. I told you. I got pregnant. That's not a full answer. Plenty of women continue their education while pregnant. I set down my dust cloth and turned to face him. Not when the father leaves and takes all the money from your joint bank account. Not when you're suddenly homeless with morning sickness and no health insurance. Not when survival becomes more important than dreams. What were you studying? Social work. I wanted to help women in crisis situations. Domestic violence survivors, women leaving trafficking situations, single mothers who needed advocacy. I laughed bitterly. Turns out I became one of the women I wanted to help. You're not helpless, Vincent said firmly. You're working 3 jobs to provide for your son. You're surviving against odds that would break most people. That's not helpless. That's strong. His words hit me like a physical touch. When was the last time someone had called me strong? When had anyone seen past my exhaustion to the determination underneath? Thank you, I whispered, my throat tight. I mean it, Elena. I've seen a lot of people in my life, powerful people, wealthy people, dangerous people. Most of them wouldn't last a week in your shoes. We held eye contact for a moment too long, and I felt that dangerous pull again. The connection that shouldn't exist between a housekeeper and her employer, especially one who lived in a world I didn't understand. I should get back to work, I said, breaking the moment. Elena, wait. He stood up, moving around the desk. I need to tell you something. This house, my life, it's not safe. People who get close to me become targets. And I think you're becoming close to me. Mr. Romano, Vincent. When it's just us, call me Vincent. Vincent, I tested the name and saw something flare in his eyes. I'm just your housekeeper. No, you're not. And we both know it. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that conversation in this room. The way you spoke about loss, about survival. The way you weren't afraid of me. Elena, I think I'm falling for you, and that's the most dangerous thing that could happen. My heart hammered against my ribs. This is crazy. We barely know each other. I know you read poetry in Spanish. I know you dropped everything to save your son. I know you work until your hands bleed and still smile at him like he's your whole world. I know you're stronger than anyone gives you credit for. What else do I need to know? You need to know that I can't afford to lose this job. That I have a son who depends on me. That getting involved with you could destroy the fragile stability I built. I would never let that happen. I would protect you. Both of you. And what happens when your enemies decide I'm a liability? When they use me or Marco to get to you? I shook my head. I've already lost too much. I can't risk losing my son. Then let me help you disappear, Vincent said urgently. I have resources. I can set you up somewhere safe, somewhere with enough money that you never have to work 3 jobs again. You and Marco can start over. And never see you again? It would be safer. But is that what you want? He closed his eyes, his jaw clenched. No. What I want is to have you both here, safe, with me. But what I want and what's safe are 2 different things. Before I could respond, Mrs. Castellano's voice came over the intercom. Mr. Romano, there's a situation in the kitchen. We both rushed downstairs to find Marco crying, his hand red and swelling. He touched the stove, Mrs. Castellano explained, looking stricken. I turned away for 1 second. It's okay, I said, scooping Marco into my arms. Where's the first aid kit? Vincent was already moving. This way. Follow me. In his private bathroom, Vincent ran cool water over Marco's hand while I held my son close, whispering soothing words in Spanish. Está bien, mi amor. Mama's here. You're okay. It's not too bad, Vincent said gently, examining the burn. 1st degree. We'll put some aloe on it. He looked at Marco with surprising tenderness. You're a brave boy, Marco. I bet you're braver than most grown men I know. Marco's tears slowed, his eyes widening at this powerful stranger who spoke to him with such gentleness. You know my name? Your mama talks about you all the time. Says you're the strongest, smartest boy in all of Chicago. Mama says that? Every day, Vincent confirmed, and I felt my heart crack open at the softness in his voice. As Vincent carefully bandaged Marco's hand, I watched these 2 people, my son and this complicated, dangerous man, connect in a way I never expected. Marco, who was usually shy around strangers, leaned against Vincent's shoulder like he'd found safety there. Thank you, I whispered. Vincent looked up at me, Marco between us, and I saw everything I'd been trying to deny reflected in his eyes. This wasn't just attraction. This was something deeper, more permanent, more terrifying. Elena, he said quietly. I can't let you go. I know I should. I know it's selfish and dangerous. But I can't. Then don't, I heard myself say. Don't let us go. We'll figure out the rest. That was the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped being just the housekeeper and became something more. The moment Vincent Romano decided that protecting me and my son was worth any risk. But neither of us could have predicted just how high that risk would become. ACT 4, When Darkness Comes Calling, 28:00-35:00. For 3 beautiful weeks, we existed in a bubble of impossible happiness. Vincent moved us into the mansion for safety, he said, but we both knew it was because none of us could bear to be apart anymore. Marco had his own room decorated with toys and books, and I watched in wonder as this feared crime boss got down on the floor to build block towers with my son. Higher, Vincent. Marco would demand, and Vincent would laugh, actually laugh, adding another block to their precarious creation. Higher than this, we'll need engineering permits, Vincent would joke, and Marco would giggle like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. At night, after Marco was asleep, Vincent and I would sit in the library, talking for hours. He told me about his childhood, about losing his father to violence, about building an empire from blood and fear because it was the only inheritance he'd received. I never wanted this life, he confessed one night, his head in my lap while I ran my fingers through his hair. I wanted to be an architect. Design buildings instead of criminal enterprises. It's not too late, I said softly. You could change. Walk away from this world. It doesn't work like that, Elena. Once you're in, the only way out is in a coffin. Then we'll be careful. We'll be smart. Being smart isn't always enough. He was right. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I'd taken Marco to the park with Vincent's security detail following at a discreet distance. We were feeding ducks when I noticed the black van parked too close, its windows too dark. Time to go, one of Vincent's guards said urgently, his hand going to his weapon. But they moved faster. 3 men emerged from the van, guns drawn, faces covered. They grabbed Marco before I could scream, before I could move, before Vincent's guards could react. Take her too, one of them ordered in Italian. Romano needs to understand he can't have weakness. They threw a bag over my head, shoved me into the van, and I heard Marco crying, "Mama! Mama," as we sped away. The warehouse they took us to smelled like rust and despair. They tied me to a chair, left the bag on my head, and I listened to Marco sobbing in the darkness beside me. "Baby, it's okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was shaking. "Mama's here. Everything's going to be okay." "Want Vincent," Marco cried. "Want Vincent to save us." "He will, baby. He will." But I wasn't sure. How would Vincent even know where we were? How could he find us in time? Chicago was a big city, full of abandoned buildings and forgotten places. They removed the bag from my head, and I saw we were in some kind of old factory. Marco was in a cage, an actual cage, crying and reaching for me. My heart shattered. "Please," I begged the men standing guard. "Please let him go. He's just a baby. Take me, hurt me, but let him go." "Romano needs to learn," one of them said. "The Moretti family doesn't forget insults. He's a child. He has nothing to do with your war. He has everything to do with it. He's Romano's weakness. And so are you." They left us alone in the warehouse, just one guard watching us from the corner. I could hear Marco's frightened whimpers, and every sound broke me a little more. "Sing to me, Mama," Marco whispered. "Like you do at bedtime." So I sang. Spanish lullabies my mother had sung to me, my voice cracking with tears but continuing because my son needed me to be strong. I sang until my throat was raw, until the guard yelled at me to shut up, until I had no voice left at all. That's when we heard it. Gunfire. Shouting. The guard by the door reached for his weapon, but the door exploded inward. Vincent stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, blood on his shirt, gun in his hand, and fury in his eyes that would have terrified me if it wasn't directed at our captors. "Touch them again," he said, his voice deadly calm, "and I will spend the rest of your short lives teaching you about pain." What happened next was violent and quick. Vincent's men secured the warehouse while Vincent came directly to us, untying my ropes with shaking hands. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" "Marco," I gasped. "Get Marco." Vincent crossed to the cage and broke the lock with his bare hands. He lifted my son gently, cradling him against his chest while Marco sobbed into his shoulder. "I've got you, brave boy. I've got you. You're safe now. You came," Marco cried. "You saved us." "Always," Vincent promised fiercely. "I will always come for you." Both of you. Outside, police sirens wailed. Vincent looked at me, and I saw decision crystallize in his eyes. I'm going to make this right, he said. All of it. ACT 5, the price of protection, 35:00 END. That's how we ended up at the police station with Detective Harris staring at us in disbelief. Vincent had walked in voluntarily, carrying evidence against the Moretti family that would destroy their organization. But more than that, he'd brought evidence against his own family, documents, recordings, bank records that would dismantle the Romano criminal empire. Why? Detective Harris kept asking. Why would you do this? You'll lose everything. Vincent looked at me, holding a sleeping Marco, and I saw everything I needed to know in his eyes. Because I found something worth more than power, he said simply. I found family. Real family. And I'm done letting this world put them in danger. The deal took 6 hours to negotiate. Vincent would testify, turn state's witness, give the FBI everything they needed to clean up Chicago's organized crime in exchange for immunity and protection for me and Marco. You'll be in witness protection, the federal prosecutor explained. New names, new city, new lives. All 3 of you. Together? I asked. We stay together? If that's what you want. I looked at Vincent, this complicated, dangerous man who had somehow become my son's hero and my heart's home. Yes, I said firmly. Together. That's what we want. 6 months later, we're living in a small beach town in Oregon. Vincent, now going by the name James Mitchell, works as an architect, finally using the degree he earned years ago in secret. I'm finishing my social work degree online and volunteering at a women's shelter. And Marco? Marco calls Vincent Papa now and builds sandcastles on the beach while his parents watch, amazed that life can be this peaceful. Do you miss it? I ask Vincent one evening as we sit on our porch, watching the sunset paint the ocean orange and gold. The power, the money, the respect? He pulls me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. I miss nothing about that life. This, you and Marco and quiet mornings and normal problems, this is everything I never knew I wanted. We're not rich anymore, I point out. This house is tiny. Your car is 10 years old. Elena, I was never rich. I had money, but I was bankrupt in every way that mattered. You made me wealthy. You and Marco gave me something worth living for instead of just surviving. I lean into his embrace, feeling the truth of his words settle into my bones. I was so scared that day in the library, I confess. When you first really saw me, I was terrified of what that visibility meant. And now? Now I understand that being seen isn't dangerous. Staying invisible is what almost killed me. You taught me that I was always worth seeing. I just needed someone brave enough to look. That night, after Marco is asleep, Vincent and I walk on the beach, our feet bare in the sand, our hands intertwined. Elena, he says suddenly. I never asked properly. I just assumed we'd stay together. Asked what? He drops to one knee in the wet sand, pulling a simple ring from his pocket. I don't have family rings anymore. I don't have wealth or power or anything I used to think defined me. But I have love. And hope. And the desperate desire to spend every day for the rest of my life showing you that you matter. Elena Vasquez, will you marry me? Will you let me be Marco's father officially? Will you build this new life with me? Tears stream down my face as I pull him to his feet and kiss him with everything I have. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Narrator's closing message: if my story touched something in you, I want you to know this: you are never too broken to be loved. You are never too poor to deserve respect. You are never too invisible to be seen by someone who matters. I spent years believing I had to shrink myself to survive. That safety meant staying small, staying quiet, staying invisible. But the truth is that real safety comes from being fully seen by people who choose to protect you not because you're weak, but because you're worth protecting. Vincent didn't save me. I was already surviving before he came along. What he did was see me, value me, and choose me. And that choice gave me permission to choose myself. So if you're feeling invisible right now, if you're working 3 jobs and wondering when life gets easier, if you're a single mother who feels like the world has forgotten your name, I see you. Your strength matters. Your struggle matters. You matter. And somewhere out there, someone is waiting to see you too. Not to save you, but to stand beside you while you save yourself. Be brave enough to be visible. Be strong enough to accept help. Be wise enough to know that needing support doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Your story isn't over. Sometimes it takes a chapter of darkness to appreciate the light that's coming. Keep going. You're worth it.